To you and me, a bird may be a pretty animal to look at, or maybe an annoying creature to avoid. But whatever your opinion may be, birds are more beneficial to society than we truly give them credit for. According to Barry Yeoman, former professor at Duke and award-winning journalist, discusses in his publication in 2013, Maggie Marsh, a Lake Erie birdwatching area in Ohio, that generated $26 million in the year 2011 and created 283 jobs. Now, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service's 2011 National Survey on Hunting, Fishing, and Wildlife Associated Recreations discusses how approximately $54.8 billion is annually expended in all aspects of wildlife viewing. Now, birds are responsible for 69.2% of that market, which means people like you and me, regular Americans, we spend about $37.9 billion to go watch birds. Now you're thinking, okay, birds, who cares? Why do we care about birds? Well, according to Scott Ross, assistant professor at Oklahoma State, Tom Will from the United States Fish and Wildlife Services, and Peter Mara, who is head of the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center, they discuss how there are obstructions in the space of these birds. These obstructions are power lines. Now, power lines are responsible for the death of anywhere from 12 to 64 million birds each year in America. 8 to 57 million of these birds die due to collision, and 0.9 to 11.6 million of these birds die due to electrocution. This is why the United States government should combat the avian mortality due to collision with power lines. So, how big really is this issue? Come on, I mean, it's a bunch of birds. What damage can they really cause? According to the Blackout Tracker Annual Report of 2013, there's approximately 3,236 power outages a year. Now, Georgia Wildlife, a subdivision of the Department of Natural Resources, discusses how birds are responsible for about 5 to 15% of all power outages. Now, this means that they're responsible for anywhere from 161 to 485 power outages each year. The Blackout Tracker Annual Report dives even deeper into this issue, where they discuss approximately $150 billion worth of damages are caused because of power outages. Damages due to lost output, lost wages, spoiled inventory, delayed production, and damage to the electric grid itself. Now, birds being responsible for anywhere from 5 to 15% of the total power outages, that means the birds are responsible for anywhere from $7.5 to $22.5 billion worth of damage. $22.5 billion. So, what laws or regulations are set in place to help protect these birds, to help protect them from dying and help protect our economy? The answer is not too many. Bonneville Power, a federal agency, discusses how you need to meet negotiations with the landowner if you want to build a power line. You don't have to take in consideration the flight patterns of birds, their migratory paths, or their habitats. As long as you and the landowner meet an agreement, you're good to go. OSHA, the Occupational Safety Health Administration, discusses how elevated warning lines must be equipped with flags or visible markings. These are there to warn humans and low-flying objects. But these aren't in place to help birds identify these power lines. That isn't their initial intent. This is why we have to do something. We have to take action. Now, the United States Fish and Wildlife Services would be the government agency that is in charge of my proposed plan, due to their current involvement in the issue in gathering statistics as well as conducting research. Now, there are some things that we can do to help this issue, and there are other things that we just can't, whether they be too expensive or take too long. The Avian Power Line Interaction Committee discusses how we can replace standard wire with tree wire. This tree wire it's stronger, it's thicker. It will help prevent power outages. However, it will cost $1,900 per mile to replace standard wire with tree wire. With Energy.gov citing 450,000 miles of overhead power lines throughout America, that means it would cost $855 million which is just way too expensive. CNN writer Matt Smith is onto something where he discusses, why don't we bury all the power lines? Let's put them underground. Make it easier. Let's just do that. Well, the State Utilities Commission says otherwise, where they discuss it would cost $41 billion and it would take up to 25 years. So not only will it be too expensive, but it's just going to take way too long. Senior environmental scientist Marcus Ellie is onto something, though, through his research in an article published by the California Energy Commission. He discusses how we can institute fireflies, a 3.5 by 6 inch device that's placed every 12 meters across these power lines. Now, this device has been proven to reduce avian collision by 60%. If we were to place these 3.5 by 6 inch fireflies every 12 meters across all 450,000 miles of overhead power lines, that would cost $1.7 billion, which again is very expensive. However, this is successful, which is why I've decided to conduct and promote a large-scale trial to prove the success and show that in turn it will save us money. I've decided to choose the state of New York as my example. The state of New York, according to the report on utilization of power lines in New York, approximately 20,313 miles of overhead power lines in New York. That's about 18% of the total overhead power line population in America. Now, with 18% of the total power line population and these $35 fireflies, as noted by P&R Technologies, the manufacturer of these fireflies, that would cost $94 million. $94 million is a lot of money. However, in turn, we would be saving money, because with birds costing anywhere up to $22.5 billion worth of damage, across this 18% power lines with a 60% reduction rate, we can save up to $2.43 billion in just the state of New York. However, you all are still sitting there thinking to yourselves, well, how are we going to raise that initial $94 million? The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities discusses how specific taxes are used, how the government uses them. Specifically, alcohol tax, how the government uses alcohol tax for government infrastructure. This is why I've decided to tax alcohol for just 1 year. And according to the tax policy, if we tax alcohol for just 1 year by 0.0145%, we can raise that $94 million and we can fund this project. Now, the Avian Powerline Interaction Committee discusses other options that we can use, specifically a 3-step program. First, they discuss preventative. We can analyze the habitats of these birds, analyze their migratory paths, their flying patterns, and we can avoid building power lines in these areas. Second, a reactive approach. We can document the deaths of the birds, understand why they died, what happened, what caused it, how can we prevent it in the future. And third, a proactive approach. We can evaluate the risk of current power lines, and we can increase the education of employees so they understand truly what is going on and why this really is such a big deal. Now, again, you're asking yourself, how are we going to fund this 3-step program, all the training and the research? Well, lucky for us, there is no burden placed on the taxpayer, because these are currently implemented programs funded by the Electric Power Research Institute and the California Energy Commission. Birds play a tremendous role in society, in our economy. They help us through tourism and bird watching. They hurt us through avian collisions and power outages. There are no laws or regulations in place that specifically help protect these birds, which is why it is our duty to go out there and speak on behalf of them. We need to propose these plans and show that they're successful, show that we will save money. So I urge you all, every single one of you, if you're going to come out of this room with one thing, let's save a little bird seed in our pocket, and let's save a whole lot more birds in the sky. Thank you.